the WeTrack site.
All right, thank you, Law. As Law mentioned, my name is Rusty Bentley. I am a web developer at Saratoga and have been working as part of the team developing this site. So the main goal of this webinar is to kind of give you some insight on how to use the site and where everything is located. First of all, I'd like to kind of jump back to the home page here. Just give you a quick overview of the site itself. Not only is the site here for tracking purposes, I think it's also here for information for those who are interested. So you'll see on the home and about pages, there are links and other information regarding the Work Ethic Diploma. You can view the standards, the list of participating schools, a list of the partners, and some information about the LEAP program. As well, on the contact page, as well as Law's information in there as the contact, there's also a support link. As he mentioned, Saratoga is going to be performing maintenance and support for the website. If at any time you or anyone using the site runs into an error or has a question about how to do something, feel free to come to this contact page, click the request service link. That will jump you over to Saratoga's request service form. You can just complete this form, submit it, and we will be in touch with you to hopefully answer your question or resolve your issue. So I believe that's a quick overview of what the site is. So I'm just going to jump into it and kind of discuss the two different sides of the site right now. First, we have the student side, where they can come to the site and register. Once they are registered, they have a few options where they can manage their account, view their progress, that sort of thing. And then we'll jump into, I guess, the most important side for you all, which would be the school official or the staff side of things. So I'm just going to get started. In the upper top right-hand corner, you see a register and a login button. If you are a new student and you want to register, they would come here, click the register button, select student from the drop down, click next. They would input the information here. It's kind of just some basic information as far as username, passwords. They would select what school they are wanting to register with. It's just simply a drop down. If you are looking on here and you don't see your school listed and you need it listed, you can please contact Law and he will send that to us. Also, the student would select their graduation year. Some basic personal information as far as name and email address. The date of birth and gender we've kind of added for tracking purposes, kind of later down the road when we want to start doing reports and that sort of thing. They are listed as optional, so if a student doesn't want to provide that information, that's perfectly fine. They have the option not to do that. I'm just going to quickly fill out this form here so we can get logged in as a student, just so I can give you a quick view of what they see. Not that you would be using it a whole lot, but it would be nice for you to actually have seen it once or twice. So once they click the register button, it will create an account for them and automatically log them in. The first place it takes them to would be their manage account. Here they can edit their username, first, last name, email, any of that information that they input on the registration form. They have access to change that at any time. Next would be the view progress. This is simply a list of all the standards that are associated with the program, a quick description of it, the value of that particular standard, and whether or not this student has been awarded points for that standard. On the Transfer Schools tab or page, this is really used for a student that has registered and been verified by the school. If, for instance, a student has to move in the middle of a school year, they have the ability to come in here and transfer their work ethic diploma information from one school to another without losing any of that information. Because I just registered and I'm not logged in as a verified user, it's not showing me that option, but it's simply a drop-down box of picking their new school that they're transferring to and hitting a submit button. There's a notifications page where the system will send out some information and notifications to the students based upon different things that happen within the system. I think this is really here for some things that we're implementing down the road, but we've already added it in here just so they can get used to seeing it. Then, of course, there is the standard change your password page, which I hope is pretty self-explanatory. So that's a real quick overview of what the student has to see and what they can do as far as functionality within the system. So I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on that simply because I know you're not here to see that. I know you're here to see and learn about the staff side of things. So I'm going to go ahead and in the upper top right corner, click log off. And then I'm going to log in as a staff member. As Lal mentioned, when he receives the requests from the schools, he will forward those on to me and I will go in, set up a new user for that school, and then notify you once that user is set up. You will also see that there is a forgot password link here. So if a student or a staff member fails to remember their password, you can click that link and it will take you through the process of resetting that password for you. So once I am logged in as a staff member, you can see on the left-hand side here, the navigation options are a bit different. The first page that it automatically takes you to is the Manage Account. This is where, similar to the student, the staff member that is logged in can update or change their username, first, last name, and email. The only thing they are not able to adjust would be the school itself that they are assigned to. I'm going to kind of skip over the managed students for now just because I want to kind of briefly touch on these others and then come back and spend most of the time on the managed students portion. So I'm going to jump over to staff accounts. As Lal mentioned, Saratoga will set up a primary account for each school, and then once that account is set up, you can go in and set up as many or as few new users associated with that school as you would like. So the staff accounts page here simply gives you a list of the current staff members that have been registered for this school. Um, on the right-hand side here, beside each name, you do have an edit button, which simply allows you to change first and last name or an email address associated with each user. And then once again, there's a reset password in case that user forgets their password. To set up a new staff member, you would log in as the primary user or another user that has been created already, and click the Add New Staff button. It takes you to the staff registration page. You would just input some general information here, the username that the new user would like to use, the password, first and last name, and the email that would be associated with this user. Click the create, and you'll see it's the school listed here is the same school as the current user that's logged in. So this new staff registration would be associated with that same school. Create, and then that will update our list of registered staff members, and you'll see our new staff member here listed on the bottom. Something that I'll talk about a little more in depth later are these column headers, or each column in this grid are able to be filtered. That doesn't really come into play so much when you're listing the 4, 5, 6 staff members, but once we get over to the manage students portion where you might have 200, 300, 400 students listed, the ability to be able to filter and narrow down those names really comes into play. So that is adding new staff members. Once again, there's a change password option, which I hope is self-explanatory. And then there is a reports page as well. You have the ability to select which year you would like to pull information from. You have the ability to assign how many seniors were enrolled, I guess, for that school year. Then it gives you a list of the students that were registered for that year. You have the ability to export this list to Excel, and then of course we all know the abundance of reports and things that you can generate through Excel using this information. I think this is a portion that's going to be developed a little bit more later down the road. Right now, we've added it on here so you can see it, but as far as reporting goes, we really didn't want to focus on that. We wanted to focus more on giving the staff the ability to manage points for students. So I will jump into the meat of things now and jump to the Manage Students page. The first thing I want to point out on this page is that we have a grid with information here, but we also have 3 different tabs on this grid. And I'm going to kind of go through them backwards, just so I can explain each of them in depth. First, we'll look at the Unverified tab. Now, currently when a new student registers through the site, that student is automatically marked as unverified, as in they have not been approved by any school. The school of their choosing during the registration process will receive a notification here in the Unverified tab, letting the staff know that, hey, we've got this new student, Henry Williams. He registered to be a part of our school. So you as a staff member can take this name, um, look through your records, verify that that student is enrolled in your school or not enrolled in your school, and you have two options. You can approve the registration or you can deny the student's registration. To approve the registration, you simply click the approve button. It will mark the student as verified and move him to the Manage tab where it just lists the verified students for this school. So I will approve him, and you'll notice my list updates and my count here in the tab is updated as well. So if I look at the next student here, Max Hunt, and I decide that he is not enrolled in our school and I need to deny his registration, I simply click the deny button. It brings up a pop-up window where you can enter the reasoning for your rejection of his registration to your school. So it may be something like not enrolled here or live in a different school district. I'm not really sure what those reasons would be, but for any reason that you want to deny this student, you can enter it here. Once you enter your reasoning, you can click the Send Rejection button. What that does is it triggers the system to email that user to letting them know that they have been rejected. It will send an email to the email address that they entered during the registration process. It will also delete that user's account since it has been denied, and they will have to go through the registration process once again, selecting an appropriate school. So once again, just kind of to clarify, the unverified tab is where all new registrants will show up, and you have to simply approve that student to be a part of the Work Ethic Diploma program at your school or deny them. Moving on to the Transfers tab. When I very briefly went through the student side of things, I mentioned that they have the ability to transfer their work ethic diploma credits if they happen to move and have to change schools in the middle of a year. This is where those transfer requests show up for the new school. So very similar to the unverified tab, you're given the user's first and last name, their current school that they've been verified for, and you would do your research, do your check, make sure that they are actually enrolled or transferring to your school. If that is true and you need to approve the transfer, you simply click approve. It will remove them from the transfers list and move them into your manage tab where you can manage all of your students. If you need to deny a transfer, once again, it's very similar to the unverified tab where you would just simply click the deny button. Brings up the same window. You would input your reason for rejection or denial. Click the send rejection button. And then the only difference here is instead of sending an email to that user, it would send a notification through the system to that user. Since this user has already been verified and is actively part of a school and the program, we don't necessarily want to delete their account. We just want to notify them that their transfer has been denied. They may have just accidentally selected the wrong school in the transfer drop-down list, something as easy as that. So we don't want to completely wipe them out of the system. Now moving to the Manage tab, where I think the meat of things that are going to happen will take place. You'll notice that it gives you a list of all verified students or registrants. It will give you their username, first and last name, the total number of points that they have been awarded through the program so far, and their graduation year. The edit button here simply allows you as a staff member to change their graduation year if for some reason it was input incorrectly or whatever the case might be, why that needs to be changed. As I mentioned, that you might be a school where you have a few hundred students listed here. At the bottom of the grid, you have the option to choose how many items per page you would like to show. By default, it's 10, but you can show up to 50 on a single page at one time. Then to the left here, on the bottom left of the grid, you have the ability to cycle through the pages. Now, if we wanted to add points to a particular student, each student has a little blue arrow to the left of their name. We would click that button, and it opens up the list of standards for the program. It gives a brief description of each standard, the point value that is associated with that standard, and if the student has achieved or has been awarded those points. Adding points to a user or to a student is as simply as clicking the edit button beside whichever standard that you need to apply points for. So if they had no unexcused absences, let me go back here. No unexcused absences, I would follow it over, click the edit button. That would make available a checkbox here to mark that this student has achieved this standard. So I will check that checkbox and click the update button. That will now signify yes, that this student has achieved this standard. Now there are a few standards here that are, I guess you can say, grouped together. For instance, the attendance standard. There are 3 different point values for 3 different types of attendance. We have set that to where you are not able, or the system will not allow for multiple points to be allowed for attendance. So if I come in here the first time and I say this student has no more than 3 absences, has achieved is yes. If I want to change that to no more than 5 absences, I can simply click edit, check the checkbox for that, update, and you'll notice that it changed the other attendance to no. So we're not actually awarding them multiple points for each category. When you're finished awarding points for this student, you can click the little blue arrow to the left of their name to collapse that list of standards for that student. And you'll notice the total point value here didn't update once we changed it, but in the very bottom right of the grid, there's a refresh button. We can click that, and it will update those total points for that student. And so if you need to go to another student and start awarding points, you simply find them in the list, click the little arrow to expand the standards for that student, award as needed, and then collapse them back. I mentioned earlier that each of these columns in the grid is able to be filtered. Just a quick demonstration of that. If I know that I'm looking for John Smith, but I have a list of 400 students here, I don't want to have to scroll down each page or cycle through each page to try and find his name. So the first thing I can do is go to the last name column and click on the little kind of funnel looking icon. And it will give you an option of how to filter this column. Do I want to do something where it is equal to, is not equal, starts with, contains? There's a whole list of ways that you can filter this column. But since I know that I'm looking for John Smith, I'm going to say is equal to, and then I know his last name is Smith. I will click the filter button, and you'll notice that'll automatically filter my list here to only names that have the last name equal Smith. Now in this instance, I'm only filtering down 5 different names, so it didn't really do a whole lot. But if you have 20, 30 different Smiths and you want to filter it even further, you can come over to the first name column, click the filter icon, and do first name is equal to John. Click the filter button, and then it will narrow it down to that one particular student that I'm looking for. To clear the filtering, you simply click on the little filter icon in the column, click the clear, and it will remove that filter. That's really it. We've tried to make it as simplistic as possible. We didn't really want to overcomplicate it. We don't think it needs to be overcomplicated. This project is kind of a multi-phase project. The first phase here that's been completed really just gives you the initial ability to start keeping track of those points. The later phases are going to start to incorporate the employer side of things and what do we do once the student graduates and that type of thing. But that's really the demonstration that I had. I kind of covered everything that I think would be important. I'm going to unmute everybody and kind of ask, does anybody have any questions that maybe I didn't touch on that I can help clarify?
Lottie Ryans, I have a quick question.
Sure.
When you were talking about having to hit the refresh button for the points to add up,
Yes,
do you
ma'am.
have to do that, I guess 2 things, individually, or could you do all the students at one time? And if you don't do that, but then you sign off, does it then calculate for you anyway?
Yes. To answer the second part first, I guess, you do not have to click the refresh button for those points to take effect. So if I come back in here to student 1 and I want to edit the attendance, once I click this update button, that will actually save the change itself. So that change is saved and their point total is correct regardless of you hit that refresh button or not. The first part of your question is, do you have to hit the refresh after every single user? No. Really, the refresh button is just there for your benefit. If you need to see the updated total of points, you can click that refresh and see it. But you can update multiple students and then click the refresh and it will update them all at once.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
This is Tammy Wolf from Dobbins Bennett.
Yes, ma'am.
And I have a question about essentially the student end and how it interfaces with the staff end. So if a student tries to enter a requirement on their end, how is the staff member going to be able to be prompted to know the student has entered something? And are they going to be able to like scan that document and upload it? Or is this going to have to be a paper process on the staff end to look at whatever they've turned in and verify it?
Currently, the student has no way to, I guess, assign themselves credits toward a standard through the system. Everything is going to need to be done on the staff side. So if they receive a certificate or complete one of the standards, they will have to go see a staff member, let them know that they've completed it, and provide, I guess, proof. And then it falls upon the staff at that school to update that student's points through the system.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions that might have come up or something I can clarify for anyone else?
Maybe I missed it, but when did this site go live?
This site is actually live now. I will go back to the home page here, and just so you can see the actual URL of where you need to go to get to the site, it's just simply workethicdiploma.com. So currently there's no live data in it per se, other than schools. Once Law receives your request to be involved in the program, he will forward your email address and the school and name and that sort of thing onto Saratoga. We will set up a primary account for that school, and then that school has the ability to add as many or as few users as needed.
Will there be an option for us to group students according to homerooms, or will the teachers have to go through the whole list of students to get to theirs?
Currently, there's no option to group students. Like I mentioned, this is a kind of multi-phase project. The initial goal, or the phase one of it, was just to simply get it up and running and give the school staff the ability to keep track of the points within the system. That might be something that we touch upon or add in at a later time. But as far as I know, there has not been any talk about grouping students. Any other questions? All right. Well, that is all the training that I had for today. Like I said, I think it's a pretty simplistic system. If at any time you have questions about it, you can either email Law at his email address here, on the contact page, or you can go to the support and request service tab, fill out that form, and that will go directly to us at Saratoga. But yes, if you have any further questions or need clarification on anything, those would be your two avenues for getting answers for those. But if nobody else has any other questions, I believe we are done. Also, just a note.
Rusty, you there? I got a question.
Sure, certainly.
Is there anywhere on the site where we can have access to the industries who have signed on, guaranteeing a job interview?
On the About page, there is the list of industry partners. Currently, this is all that we have, is this PDF. But once again, that is certainly something that we can look at adding in later. I know there is kind of an employer side of things that is in the works for the future, but that might involve an updatable list of.
This may be just a suggestion for like if you update or as you update the site, but having a way to search this or having additional information or links to their websites or things like that. As we're talking with students and as students are working on these standards, it might be really good for them to have the ability to get to that information on those employers.
Sure, certainly. And like I said, that is probably something that we're going to add in later when we start getting into the partner side or the employer side of things. But we really just we knew school was starting soon. So we really just wanted to get a product out there where you are able to start keeping track of points. But yes, I will make note of that and pass it along to Law that is something that you all are interested in.
So when can students log on?
Students can start logging on now. They can go to the site, or if you want to assist the student in the registration process, you can go to the site and help them through the registration. So they would simply go to workethicdiploma.com, and then in the top right-hand corner, there's a register button. That would take them to the registration form. They complete that, and then they are in the system.
How many different people from each school can be on here?
As far as I know, there is no limit. So are you talking about from the staff side of things?
From the staff side of things, about how many, since you haven't done it yet, so there's no data to look at yet.
Right. I mean, there's no limit to that.
Rusty, I see a question in chat about is there a place to print new student applications?
There is not. Really, the only way to register in the system is through the website itself. That's something else that I can make a note and talk to Law about a possibility of having a PDF version of the registration form, and then maybe someone can print it out and just turn it into the school staff if they need assistance in the registration. I did see a question earlier before we started about if this training was going to be recorded. I am recording it. Once it is complete, I will turn that over to Law, and he mentioned something about posting it somewhere for everyone to have access to.
There was also a question in chat about district level people having access to multiple high schools in their system. Have you addressed that?
I haven't addressed that question. That is something that law or that we have discussed. I'm not sure to what degree that would be implemented. As far as having kind of a district level or district level user that has access to different schools. But that once again, that's something I can make note of and talk to law about. But currently, there is nothing built into the site to do that. Any further questions I can help clarify or answer?
Thanks for spending the time with us today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you all for listening to my voice.
I'll do it direct to the point. I loved it.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I'll go ahead and end the meeting. Like I mentioned, if you do think of something in the future, feel free to navigate to the site, go to the contact page. You can either email Law at his email address there, or you can use the support button and send in a request, and someone will be in touch with you soon. But thank you again for your time this afternoon. Everybody, have a good afternoon.